What's up, everyone? My name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. So, one of the biggest, most exciting developments in the world of tech has, of course, been artificial intelligence. And because of its enormous potential, a lot of investors have been flooding into the market looking for the best companies that take full advantage of everything that AI has to offer to invest in them long term. Well, in today's video, we're going to list off my top four top of the line, absolute favorite AI related stocks. And these are companies that I think will power, fuel, and facilitate artificial intelligence over the long term. And I think they'll play some of the biggest roles in the future of AI in the entire world. So these are my absolute favorite top four stocks. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy the video, but let's not waste any more time. Let's jump straight into it. Okay, now kicking things off here with stock number one, that's going to be my favorite facilitator, meaning that they provide a lot of the infrastructure and the software and services that are required to run artificial intelligence. And in my opinion, there's no other company in the world that seems more well equipped to handle the power and the absolute scale, the massive scale of artificial intelligence than the almighty Microsoft, ticker symbol MSFT. It's not a cheap stock and frankly has never really been, as they rarely ever dip, but with gigantic sales and equally impressive profits, you can bet that Microsoft will be pouring gigantic amounts of money into AI initiatives well into the future. We're talking over $140 billion in revenue and over $40 billion in net income just in the past year alone. There's only a very small amount of companies that can really match those kind of massive numbers. And when it comes to AI, there's also very few companies that can match Microsoft's already well-established infrastructure. Perhaps AI's biggest growth driver has been cloud computing, and vice versa, AI has also fueled cloud growth as well. But all of it is because the use of artificial intelligence used to really be limited only to those with large amounts of money that could afford using the world's most expensive and powerful computers that were capable of running AI software. So it had to be people with connections that would really be able to do it. But with the rise of cloud computing, that access has now been granted to many different companies and governments and schools and even individual people like you and me, as we're all really able to use fast computers along with inexpensive or sometimes even free storage and software virtually anywhere in the world through the use of the cloud. Not to mention that cloud computing allows for the collection of enormous amounts of data as well, and that's very crucial for artificial intelligence. And we'll actually talk more about that in just a second when we cover data fueling stocks. But when looking at an article from Iron Mountain Research titled "Cloud Computing and AI Have Combined to Fuel Each Other's Stunning Growth," they cite numerous sources for around 70% of all enterprise AI development being done in the cloud, and they conclude that AI will drive 2/3 of all public cloud use by the end of this year. That's pretty high. Well, it just so happens that Microsoft's Azure cloud platform and infrastructure have already commanded the second most market share in the entire world, only behind Amazon's AWS. But even then, they've actually been seeing higher growth than Amazon. In the last quarter, Azure grew by almost 50% year over year, while Amazon Web Services grew by less than 30%. Part of the reason why is because companies are becoming much more reliant on services that can really help their businesses, especially during the pepperoni lockdowns where people have had to work from home. And Microsoft really specializes at this since they're primarily a software-based company and really one that has developed some of the best business solutions for decades through their Office products, many of which actually integrate perfectly with Azure. In fact, this year, Microsoft's Teams service, which is similar to that of something like Zoom, for example, grew by 50% over just the past 6 months to over 115 million daily active users. Zoom reports their numbers differently, but it's believed that Microsoft is now becoming a pretty big rival to them. And these moves are what helped Microsoft achieve the most enterprise software as a service cloud market share in the entire world. We got a little off topic there, but the point is that Azure is one of the best and most dominant cloud platforms in the world, and with AI-focused tools, services, and applications that use deep learning and machine learning for numerous things like medicine, language, robotics, agriculture, autonomous driving, and even military contracts that are worth billions of dollars, you can bet that Microsoft will be one of the clear leaders in artificial intelligence for decades, probably even centuries to come. Full disclosure, Microsoft is currently my number one largest stock in my entire portfolio, so I'm obviously a big fan. Of course, though, what good is a facilitator and infrastructure related AI company without data, what I consider to be really the lifeblood of artificial intelligence? And when it comes to data, there's really two internet based companies that have always stood out to me as good long-term stock market investments. The first of which is going to be what I consider to be the largest data collecting company in the entire world, and that's Alphabet, although I really just call them Google. But either way, the stock has been on a tear, and deservedly so. Their financials are gigantic and very similar to that of Microsoft's, doing over 160 billion in sales last year alone, and yet they're still expected to grow by over 10% this year during one of the worst recessions in history, and still another 20% plus the year after as well. That's pretty crazy. Part of the reason why is, of course, due to the pepperoni lockdowns, but it's also just an inevitable trend that more and more people will use internet, and internet use will increase over time, and that's where Google completely dominates, which with the largest market share in several different categories, including digital advertising, internet search with Google, internet browser with Chrome, and mobile operating system with Android, even including all platforms where they beat out Windows. And I actually forgot to put down their dominance on this list of Gmail and Google Maps as well in those email and kind of navigating markets. But all of these are fueled even further by artificial intelligence and deep learning, whether it's to provide more accurate and relevant advertising and search results, or to even improve other parts of their business where they may not completely dominate, but they could still be huge growth drivers for them in the future, like, for example, autonomous driving, healthcare, or cloud computing. Their Waymo subsidiary is taking autonomous driving so seriously that Google is even pouring tons of money into building an entire fake city just so they can better test their vehicles. In healthcare, Google is using AI to predict injuries and diseases days ahead of when they'd typically be diagnosed, improve the speed and accuracy of cancer screenings, improve the efficiency of electronic health records, and even tap into genomic research, which, by the way, Forbes recently called the most overlooked megatrend in the world. And all of this is evident in the progress that their healthcare subsidiaries like Verily, DeepMind, and Calico are all making with the use of artificial intelligence for tons of research and the solutions that they offer. And the great thing about Google is that they don't even really need a facilitator like Microsoft to rely on, since they're able to use their enormous resources to grow and compete at a high level even in the cloud computing market. Their Google Cloud platform is already the third largest in the world and is still managing to grow at very high rates. Last quarter, they saw higher growth than even Amazon and almost as high of growth as Microsoft. So just add it all up, and I really feel like Google has their hands in just about every aspect of artificial intelligence, and that makes them one of the best choices as a long-term stock market investment, especially considering the future of AI. So Google stock is not one that I currently own myself. I definitely should, and I will soon, but that's what I'll say about Google stock, one of my top picks for sure. Sticking with data and the fuel for artificial intelligence, though, we're going to go with my second kind of data and fueling related stock here. And this is a stock that I do actually own myself, and that's going to be Baidu, ticker symbol BIDU. I already own this one. And this is sort of like the Chinese version of Google. And look, it's no secret that China has always tried to compete at the highest level on a global scale, and they definitely, try to compete heavily with the United States. And that's especially the case with artificial intelligence. Obviously, China is going to want to be one of the leaders in AI. So owning the Chinese version of something like Google actually does make some pretty good sense. Now, the stock is actually negative over the past 5 years, and not by a small amount either. It's over 30%, and even much more if you count from their all-time high. Then it's a drop of closer to like 50%, and that's why I decided to buy this stock for the first time this year myself. A good reason for it, as profits tanked last year due to investments in revenue growth that are not really profitable, like for example, their Netflix clone called IQ that has burned through a lot of cash to compete with other offerings in China. And of course, the weakening Chinese economy really hurt Baidu's digital advertising sales as well, which in turn hurts their profitability. But I think over the long term, this is a company that can easily turn things around. Like Google, they command a lot of search market share. Globally, it's like laughably low at just about 1%, since Google really runs a monopoly there. But in China, where foreign competition is either not allowed or at least heavily restricted, Baidu dominates the market with over 70% market share. In cloud computing, Baidu Cloud doesn't really have any meaningful market share worldwide, but domestically, they still manage to be the fourth largest cloud provider at around 8% of the market. And a big reason why is because of their huge investments in artificial intelligence, where they've already trained over 1 million AI talents. They've partnered with over 200 universities for AI research, and they plan to build out over 5 million intelligent cloud servers over the next 10 years. They even claim that by 2030, their cloud computing capability will be 7 times stronger than the combined power of the world's top 500 supercomputers. I don't know if that'll actually happen, but the fact that they're aiming so high means that they're obviously taking it very seriously. In fact, that high dedication seems to already be paying off, as the International Data Corporation believes that China's AI cloud services market will grow at an annual rate of almost 100% through 2024, and Baidu just so happens to be the market share leader of it. It doesn't stop there though. Baidu is even a huge player in autonomous driving with their Apollo division, which just recently became the first company to launch a publicly available robotaxi service in Beijing, among other areas in the country as well. And just to put the little kind of AI cherry on top of everything, I'll finish up by noting that Baidu has also submitted more artificial intelligence patent applications and achieved more approvals for those filings than any other company in all of China. Needless to say, Baidu is clearly not slowing down at all when it comes to artificial intelligence. And given the really big ambitions of China wanting to compete on a global scale, they're obviously going to be going all in on artificial intelligence. And I really think that Baidu could be one of the top companies for them kind of leading that charge. It's definitely a risky stock just because it is a Chinese stock, and we've talked about this in lots of videos in the past, but I still think that the risk reward ratio is looking pretty good for Baidu as a long-term investment, so I will continue to hold it myself. All right, guys, and that brings us to the final pick of my absolute favorite AI related stocks right now going into the future. And we've already covered facilitators as well as data fuelers for AI, but one company that I think will power artificial intelligence, especially through the use of their very powerful processing chips and their innovative software, that's going to be NVIDIA, ticker symbol NVDA, another stock that I do own myself. Now, the stock has been on an absolute tear in recent years, climbing by over 120% this year and a mind-blowing over 1,500% over the past 5 years alone. Time will tell if NVIDIA's business can catch up to the sky-high valuation that continues to get bigger and bigger. We're now talking about over a $300 billion market cap and a forward P ratio of about 47, despite only doing less than $3 billion in profit on about $10 billion in sales last year. But when their markets are healthy and the economy is stable, NVIDIA can be a real high flyer, and it's all of their future potential, especially in artificial intelligence, that has investors buying up the stock early in fear of missing out. For example, NVIDIA estimates that their total addressable market for the data center will surpass $100 billion in just about 4 years from now, thanks to new hardware and software like, for example, their new class of processors called DPUs that can single-handedly deliver data center services that would normally consume up to 125 CPU cores. So it's much more efficient than those CPUs. And they're now expected to reach even more customers thanks to recent acquisitions of Mellanox and a pretty big future one of ARM that will help them reach billions of people across trillions of devices. I mean, we're talking at a massive scale here. To give you an idea of how big the opportunity is for NVIDIA, their data center addressable market of over $100 billion is around 10 times larger than all the sales they did as an entire company last year, let alone the fact that they only did around $3 billion in data center revenue. So the market is over 30 times larger than that. That's a big deal. And so we talked about Microsoft and Google and Baidu already controlling huge data center platforms. And of course, NVIDIA powers many of those servers with their systems and chips. Here's a screenshot showing the largest cloud providers that NVIDIA helps power, including Amazon. But those first three stocks we talked about are also doing big things in autonomous driving, especially Google and Baidu. And it just so happens that NVIDIA also provides autonomous hardware and software for many of those companies as well. We're talking close to 400 different partners in autonomous driving, including big name automakers like even Toyota. Not to mention the gigantic opportunities with things like robotaxi services, gaming, smart cities, healthcare, biotech. I mean, these are all areas that can really benefit from the use of NVIDIA's market-leading processing power with their hardware and software and all that kind of stuff. So when you really add it all up, I think we're talking about trillion-dollar industries here. And when you look specifically at artificial intelligence, I think NVIDIA has a really good shot at powering a lot of it. So looking out long term, I think there's a lot of growth potential with NVIDIA, and it's definitely a stock that I can't really envision myself selling. I really think I'm going to be holding this one very long term. Even if it drops, I think those would be good buying opportunities. Even though the valuation is high, if the stock was to drop, I think those would all be buying opportunities really long term. So anyway, these are my favorite AI related companies and their stocks. What do you guys think? Share your opinions down below. Is there any that you would add to the list, and maybe what would you replace with them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what other videos you guys would like to see next. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. I appreciate all the support, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.